You grab it from the freezer, toss it in the microwave. You've done it 100 times without a second thought. Frozen food. But behind those frosty packages hide two secrets most people never question. Today, we uncover both. Welcome to Everyday Secrets, where ordinary things reveal extraordinary histories. Most people believe frozen food is just the inferior version of fresh, a compromise, something you settle for when there's nothing better in the fridge. It seems logical. It seems obvious. But that assumption is almost completely wrong. And it took one man standing in the Arctic cold to understand why. Clarence Birdseye was born in 1886 in Brooklyn, New York. He wasn't a chef. He wasn't a food scientist. He was a naturalist, the kind of person who spent his days studying animals and plants in the wild. In 1912, the U.S. government sent him to Labrador, Canada, to survey fish and wildlife. Temperatures fell to -40. And out there, working alongside the Inuit people, he noticed something he couldn't stop thinking about. When local fishermen pulled a fish from the water, it froze solid within seconds in the Arctic wind. No equipment, no refrigeration, just extreme cold and speed. When Birdseye thawed that fish weeks later, it tasted exactly as if it had just been caught. Back home, frozen food was mushy and tasteless. What he had just eaten was completely different. He knew there had to be a reason. His first company trying to find it went bankrupt. So Birdseye sold his and his wife's life insurance policies, started over, and in 1923 built his first freezing machine from just $7 in spare parts. Here's what nobody tells you about freezing food. It's not the cold that matters. It's the speed. When food freezes slowly, the water inside each cell forms large ice crystals, like spears growing from within. Those crystals puncture cell walls and tear through the tissue. By the time the food thaws, its structure is already destroyed. That's why slow frozen food turns soft and flavorless. Freeze it fast enough, in minutes instead of hours, and the crystals never grow large. They stay microscopic. Cell walls hold. Flavor, texture, color, all preserved. Without that speed, frozen food would never have been worth eating. Birdseye had watched the Inuit do naturally what took him years and a bankrupt company to replicate in a lab. In 1929, he sold his 168 freezing patents to what would become General Foods for $22 million, worth roughly $400 million today. Everything traced back to $7 and a fish frozen in the Arctic wind. And here's the detail that surprises almost everyone. That fresh broccoli sitting in your supermarket, it may have spent up to 2 weeks in transit before it reached the shelf, losing vitamins and antioxidants every day of the journey. Studies comparing fresh and frozen vegetables found that frozen broccoli can actually contain more riboflavin than fresh broccoli bought at the store. Birdseye didn't invent a way to preserve inferior food. He discovered that speed, not freshness, was the real secret to keeping food alive. But that's not the only secret hiding in plain sight, because the next chapter didn't begin with a scientist or an inventor. It began with a catastrophic business mistake and 260 tons of turkey going nowhere. The TV dinner looks like the most American invention imaginable. A pre-packaged meal, heated in the oven. Eat it in front of the television. Convenient, practical, simple. But the reason it exists has nothing to do with any of that. It was born from panic. The year was 1953. The company C.A. Swanson & Sons in Omaha, Nebraska, had massively overestimated how much turkey Americans would buy for Thanksgiving. They were left with 260 tons, 500 to 20,000 pounds, of frozen bird and nowhere to send it. 10 refrigerated railroad cars crisscrossed the country just to keep the electricity running and the meat cold. Executives put out a company-wide call for solutions. The winning proposal came from a salesman who had noticed the compartmentalized aluminum trays used to serve meals on Pan Am flights. His idea: package the turkey with cornbread stuffing, sweet potatoes, and peas, seal it in a 3-compartment tray, price it at 98 cents, and design the box to look like a television set. Swanson called it the TV dinner. It was ready in 25 minutes. In 1954, the first full year of production, Swanson sold over 10 million of them. By 1959, Americans were spending $500 million a year on frozen meals. Millions of women entering the workforce for the first time had found an answer to a question that had no good solution before. What does a family eat when nobody has time to cook? Here's where the story flips. The TV dinner was built for post-war American suburbia, for living rooms full of flickering black and white screens. Nobody planned what happened next. Japan, a country whose food culture is defined by obsessive freshness, where sushi chefs train for a decade just to learn to slice fish, where markets pride themselves on produce delivered before dawn. Japan became one of the world's most devoted consumers of frozen food. Today, the average Japanese person consumes 23.6 kilograms of frozen food per year. That is a record set in 2024, the 4th consecutive year of growth. Japan now has an entire restaurant built around the concept. 320 frozen dishes, 30 microwaves, 108 seats. They call it the microwave restaurant. A culture that built its entire food identity around the purity and precision of fresh ingredients quietly became one of frozen food's greatest champions. Nobody planned that. Nobody predicted it. It happened anyway, and here is the detail that surprises almost everyone. The turkey surplus story, the 10 refrigerated rail cars, the company-wide panic, the stroke of genius may never have actually happened. The Los Angeles Times investigated the account and found what they called glaring inconsistencies and falsehoods. Members of the Swanson family disputed it for years. The salesman who told the story, they believe, retold it so many times over so many decades that he eventually came to believe it himself. The most iconic origin story in the history of convenience food is probably a myth. Some things get frozen in place long before anyone stops to check whether they were ever true. The next time you reach into the freezer, you're not just grabbing a shortcut. You're holding a technology the Inuit practiced for centuries before anyone built a machine to copy it. An industry born from surplus and panic that fed a generation. And a legend that may have been invented, then frozen solid, long before anyone thought to question it. If any of these surprised you, hit the like button. Share it with someone who still thinks fresh always means better. And subscribe to Everyday Secrets for more hidden stories behind the things you never thought to question. Because the most ordinary things always have the most extraordinary histories. Which of these 2 secrets surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments.